Hello, everyone. I'm Lori with Behavior Education at Spirit Keeper Animal Sanctuary. Welcome to Serpentes Sunday for December 24th, 2023. This week is part 2 of my interview with Natalia Prado. Natalia is the keeper of Janeway the Cornsnake. You can follow her on Instagram at Janeway_the_Cornsnake. And this time we're going to be talking about Janeway's arrival with Natalia, how Natalia transitioned Janeway from the rack that she had previously been living in with her breeder to an enclosure, how she utilized hides with bottoms, passive habituation, and training Janeway to shift using cooperative care training and focusing on cooperative behaviors to manage Janeway's care from the very beginning. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that's paid off in the long run and where they're at with that now. In part 3, which will be on another day, we are going to talk about how Natalia takes Janeway with them when they travel. And then in part 4, we're going to talk about emergencies that have come up since they've had Janeway and how they have prepared for and utilized the cooperative care training during actual emergencies. So I hope you enjoy this. We want to know, from the time you brought Janeway home up till now, how that journey has gone. Did it go how you thought it would? Has it gone smoothly? Is everything the same as when you first got her? What changes have you had to make? Have emergencies come up? And I know that you're training her, so we also want to hear about that for sure.
Okay. Well, I would say that the first thing from getting Janeway from the first time she arrived and I opened the box was I was really struck by how beautiful she was. So I didn't really care about the morph when I first got her. I was more interested in her personality. But I opened that box and I was like, oh my God, she's beautiful. And it was such an excitement to have my first snake, like the animal I've always wanted to care for in my home. And I had been exposed to snakes. I'd gone to zoo open houses and things like that and held bull snakes and king snakes. But there's something special about this is my animal, and oh my God, she's gorgeous. So she was the first exposure I had to like an male animal or, albino, and her pattern morph is Tessera. It's now my favorite pattern morph. It's gorgeous. I love when I could take full pictures of her pattern. She's really, really pretty. And I feel like the camera doesn't pick up the like pink tones and deep oranges that she has. But she's very beautiful. So that was the first thing of like, oh, this is why people like care about morphs. Like,
okay. So is that her behind you there to your right?
Yeah, this is her right here.
And you mentioned male and albino. So talk a little bit about that for anybody that doesn't know what you mean by that.
So she's amelanistic, which means she lacks the black pigment. So she has red eyes and just lacks black pigment. But what you get instead are these like pinks, like you don't realize how many oranges there are until you see her. So she goes from like light salmon all the way to like these bold oranges. So yeah, she's amelanistic, and Tessera is the pattern of the coloration.
Tell us what happened. You unboxed her, and where did you guys go from there?
So prior to unboxing her, prior to her arrival, you and I in the Patreon group had discussed her transition, right? Setting her up for success, going from a breeder situation to a family pet, and understanding that they have to get used to that. At the time I had like an infant or less than a 1-year-old. My son, this was 2021. So he wasn't quite 1. And my daughter was like 4-ish. So crazy household, right? With little kids, pandemic, we're not going anywhere, right? So we talked about setting her up with a 15 quart bin. So Joe told me the exact brand that he uses so I can buy the exact same thing. And I made a duplicate as best as I could of her tote in her tank. And that is what she went into. Now I thought I could like open the box. And so like I made holes in that tote. So she could decide to stay in there or come out. And then the rest of the environment was more to my liking, more with like hides and some things around for her to climb on and things like that. And so I thought I would like very like just open it and let her crawl out kind of thing, or like be able to set her in and like open the bag she came in and leave it. But as soon as I opened it, she was coming out. Like she was like out. So I was like, oh, okay. And she had eliminated in the transport bag. So I didn't want to leave that in there for her to continue crawling over it. And I took a video of it, of me asking my husband, like, can I give her a bath? Like, oh my God, what do I do? I decided not to give her a bath. But so I kind of just used the towel or the bag to kind of like clean her off as much as I could, and then just put her in the tank. And she was exploring pretty quickly. And then she went to the highest point in the tank that she could go to, and stayed there. And so I was like, that's interesting. So one of the first pictures I took of her is she was so little back then. She was so cute. Kind of like using a cord, like the cord for one of the probes to like sit on at the top of the tank. And I'm like, okay. So my tanks so far have all been top opening because, they used to be fish tanks. And so I kind of just let her settle in for a few days. And from watching her,
use the tub, the 15 quart tub?
Yeah, she slept in it the first night for sure. But she pretty quickly found the other hides and started using like the other hides, the paper towel tubes. Like she started using her environment fairly quickly. And she was also very interested in us. So she's staring at me right now over here. She's done that from the beginning. And, I credit that to Joe picking out a really good animal for me, because she people watches just as much as we snake watch. She finds us really interesting, and she'll like, in my previous home in Virginia, before we moved back to New York, she's now in the dining room. She used to be in the living room. We would sit and watch TV, and she'd be watching TV with us, not really, but she'd be looking at us too. She finds us fairly interesting. But in talking with you, I think something that really calmed me about getting a snake and not wanting to be intrusive and not wanting to force myself on her was using hides with bottoms. And you have multiple videos about hides with bottoms. And that I think was a game changer for me, because I could not wrap my head around how I was going to get this new snake that was probably scared of me out of her tank for maintenance, and I have a top opening tank. And you really talked me off the ledge of that stress. And to this day, I have hides with bottoms, because Janeway is not a huge fan of being handled. She won't bite me or anything like that, but she would prefer not to be handled. So unless she climbs on me, I try to minimize the amount of handling that I do. So hides with bottoms have been huge in how I manage her and how I maintain the tank without stressing her out, especially in the beginning.
Now, you also manage her with some behaviors that you've trained her to do, like target training, but also station training.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit how you've done that, what you've taught her to do, and how that's been helpful in her management.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So I knew from the beginning that I wanted to do training with her, following your videos and being like, oh my God, I didn't know you can do that with snakes. And like, I did a lot of behavior modification with my dogs because they came from abuse backgrounds. So I'm not an expert, I'm not a behaviorist, but I had put a lot of time and energy into behavior modification with both of my dogs who are on like the opposite ends. You know, one was super shy and shut down, and one was, fearful, aggressive. So they were opposite ends. So I knew I wanted to do things. So from the beginning, I knew I wanted to shift train her because I was like, if she can come out on her own without me reaching in for her, knowing it's her choice so that I can do tank maintenance is my ideal, right? Like that was the goal. So I knew I wanted to do that from the beginning, but she had to learn that she could come out. Like she had to learn that she had choice. So for the first few months, I would open the tank every night for about 2 hours, and she would just stare at me, stare up, look at that, the top was different. And if I needed to do tank maintenance, I would wait until she was in a hide with a bottom, which at that point, all the hides had bottoms. Now some don't, some do. But at that point in the early days, all of them had bottoms. And I made my own from videos you showed me with like the Tupperwares with Reptile Basics black hide on top. So she had like multi-level hides. To this day, those are some of her favorite ones. And I love that I can give her like a complex hide, really, really straightforward and cheap and easy to clean and everything. So I would wait till she was in a bottom with a hide to then pull her out with that hide, and then place her in a playpen, my baby's playpen, because she was too small to climb out and she couldn't crawl out of it. So I put her there, and I would fill the playpen with things for her. And at first she wouldn't get out of the 3-level hide thing that I had made for her, but she'd poke her little head out. And that made maintenance really, really stress-free for me and stress-free for her. So I knew a game plan of how am I going to address the tank when she's not shifting out yet. And so it took about 3 months. And I have a picture, actually. It's one of the, early days pictures on my Instagram of the first time her head went over the top. And she realized, oh, I can get out, in a controlled way, right? Because uncontrolled is like the worst nightmare for a snake keeper. And so when I opened the tank, I'm sitting right nearby watching her. But then during this time as well, we're doing a lot of like passive habituation to us. So a lot of like sitting near the tank. My daughter, like I would sit her in a chair to like read books or watch her tablet or watch TV just right by her tank. She was in the living room, so she got to see a lot of movement around her to just get used to like the sounds and the smell of the house. And from your videos, I knew that it was going to take time, however much time it was, who knew, but that we were working on getting her used to us. So we did a lot of just sitting around her tank, waiting, letting her get used to us. Took about 3 months for her to realize she can put her little head out. Then it was a little more time when she would like sit near the top and just look out. And then what I did, because it's top opening, I made sure that there was no way she can get down. She was still little at this point, except, so I would have one side with something she could climb down into. And the thing she could climb down into was another 15-quart tub that she was very familiar with because she lived in one at the breeders and she had the exact same one in her tank still with her. And that 15-quart tub stayed in her tank until about last week when I changed the tank around and decided to like add different things to her into her tank. And so when she first came out, she only had one way, was to go down a paper towel tube into this tote, this 15-quart tote. And that tote, then I would move to the playpen, and she'd get to explore and whatever while I cleaned the tank and changed water. I try to change water every day. If she comes out every day, I change the water every day. If she doesn't come out, I might do every other day. But especially even in those early days, I'd watch to see where she was. There was always at least 2 waters in her tank. So I could at least always get to one. And always make sure she had fresh water, even if she was, near the other one and I didn't feel like reaching down to get it, with, me being scared that she'd strike at me or out of fear or something like that. So from there, it just kind of progressed, of her learning she could shift out. She learned that when the top opens, that means she can come out if she wants. And if she comes out, she learned which way to come out. It would be the right side of the tank. It's still the only way she can come out. Right now, she comes down this branch. But that was still the only way she could come down. She learned that pretty quickly. And once we crossed that barrier of like, oh, I can come out if I want to, she started coming out every day.
Wow. So you created a monster.
Yeah, basically. It was like, now I have to keep up with her.
Okay. So she saw the open lid and the tub next to the enclosure as a signal that she could come out, and she was taking advantage of that. Were you also doing target training separate from this? Or how were you feeding her at this time?
I was doing target training at the same time, but I was feeding her in her tank with the target, pairing the meal, the prey item with her target. I was not targeting her out, and I was not using food for her to come out. Like, her ability to come out and choice to come out was what was reinforcing. Yeah, she really liked it. Once she realized she could do it, she did it every single night. Every single night she came out. For as long as I could sit there and watch her, she would come out. Yeah.
And so you would move her to an exercise tent. It wasn't that she was coming out and free roaming in your living room.
No, I wish. She's not big enough for that. But yeah, she would come out. I would watch her come out. And sort of we made a rule in the house of like, I say, I'm opening the tank. I'm going to see if Janeway wants to come out. Oh, and I should mention, I named her after a Star Trek captain. So I love Star Trek too. So the house knows I'm opening her tank, and that means I'm not moving from that area until I know she's safely in a play tent. Because I can easily get distracted with the kids. I can easily be called to get a sippy cup or whatever. And then I forget that the tank's open, and, my shoelace is gone now when I get back. So the house, I sort of make an announcement like, I'm opening the tank, please go sit down. The kids like watching her come out and crawl out, but then they have to kind of sit and watch her. I don't want them to be spastic around her and potentially scare her. So if they want to watch her come out with me, they can sit with me and we can watch her come out, or they can just go to another area and play or whatever they're going to do. Usually they're eating dinner. So we're already sitting eating dinner, and we're kind of just, because she's in our dining room now, so we can just watch her come out. And once she's on her branch, I move the branch with her on it into the play tent. She used to come out into the shift bin, but she got a little too big for that 15-quart tub. And then I realized she started avoiding it because she was like, I think, bored. Like, she would still come out, but like, I know what that is. I don't want to go there anymore. So I still have the bin. I still have a transport bin near her tank, so she sees it and can crawl on it in it. But she won't stay in there very long. So she does use the branch to come down. And I have to watch her, because if I don't get to that branch fast enough, she's down and out. And she's big enough now that if she chose not to use the branch, she could reach the top to the bottom. And I don't know if you can see this little gap here. She has squished into that gap. And when I was not, like I lost attention for a couple of minutes and I could not find her and I was freaking out and she was wedged in under here. My husband had to like lift this whole filled tank for me to reach in and get her.
And
I
how
was
did
like,
she respond to that when you had to do that? Because you don't handle her that often. Was she
I don't
trusting
handle
enough
her that.
that she was okay with it?
She was okay with it. She was just kind of like, oh, where are we going now? I'm sure she was annoyed that I like found her hiding spot. But for Cornsnake people, this is maybe a 1/4 inch. Like it's my nail, and she fit under there as a 3-year-old.
Wow. So once she's in her exercise tent, how do you get her back to her tank?
Oh, that's a really good question. So in her exercise tent, there are hides with bottoms. So they're like cardboard boxes or paper towel tubes, that sort of thing. Her favorite one now is it's over. Oh, hello. It's over there. It's an empty glove box with like an aquarium plant in it. So she has sort of chosen that as her elevator. And so when she goes in there, I know she's kind of done with the play tent. And she's typically in there for 3 hours. Sometimes I leave her in her play tent overnight, especially after a shed or a meal. And she hasn't been out for a few days. I'll leave her in there overnight, just so that she can get exercise and stuff. But once she's in that box, I know she's really not going anywhere. It's kind of her sign of like, I'm done. So then in that, I put that box hole back into her tank. And so I don't do too much handling. She is okay if I handle her, like, but it's not her favorite thing. She
And she
has
has climbed on you before, right?
Yeah, she has on occasion chosen to climb on me, but it's typically, it'll happen when like I'm putting her back and she doesn't want to go back. So I'm better than going back, you know? So I'm like, okay, if you don't want to go back and climb on me for a little bit, I'll take it. I'll hold you. And I've gotten some cute pictures holding her. I have some cute pictures of my niece holding her because she didn't want to go back in her tent. So she just climbed on my niece. And she was like really stretched out, very calm, slow movements. So I knew she was okay. But I do keep it to a minimum. And eventually, so if I'm handling her because typically it's because she doesn't want to go back in, I'll just sort of like hang around the tank. And then she'll realize I'm not putting her back in the play tent or letting her crawl anywhere she can't go. So then she'll just crawl back in. Like, okay.
And so one of the advantages, I presume, of having a species that's native to North America is when she is out in her play tent, you don't really have to worry about her getting too cold or too hot or changing the climate of the play area because they live in North America already.
Yeah, exactly. I'm worried about especially overnight or when I travel with her, of it maybe getting too cold. But I mean, we're not traveling to Antarctica, right? We travel back to Virginia to see family. So the cold, and we heat our homes. So the coldest it ever gets is like 68, 70, which are perfectly fine nighttime temperatures for them. If any, if anything, the hard thing since coming to New York is the humidity, maintaining humidity for her. Because New York is a lot drier, and with the indoor heating, it dries out really quickly. But I've been able to manage that with like humid boxes and stuff like that, but also like a room humidifier. That really, really, really helps because I know some people are like, don't use humidifiers or whatever, but it's not a fogger directly fogging into her tank. It's a room humidifier that raises humidity for everybody because humans also need humidity. Like that's a reason we get colds is our nasal passages dry out. So without the humidifier, in the middle of winter, the humidity in the house and in her tank is like 20. or under 20. So that's just not really safe or healthy for anybody, any vertebrate living here. So we use room humidifiers for ourselves, for our children. So there is a humidifier in the dining room. There's a humidifier in our bedrooms, the kids' bedrooms. So the room humidifier helps maintain the tank around 50. I try not to let it go below 50 because they are a species that, need at least 50% humidity up to like 80% humidity in like, microclimates. And in Virginia, that was super easy. I didn't need to do anything because Virginia is way more humid. Like it's 50% humidity in winter in Florida, in Virginia. So
Thank you for watching, everyone. That wraps up part 2 of my interview with Natalia. I really enjoyed talking with her. We actually spoke for 3 hours, which is why this is being divided up into several episodes. I hope you enjoyed watching and listening to her wisdom as much as I enjoyed interviewing her. So until next time, when I release part 3, everybody please remember to always be kind and love your animals.